Good evening, everybody, and want to welcome you to the Finance Committee meeting for Wednesday, February 26th. If I can, I want to call the meeting to order, so we'll call the roll. I want Trustee Steve. Present. Trustee Brown.
Present.
And Trustee House is present. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, Trustee Steve, you have a prayer you can lead us in, please?
Everybody bow their heads. In the name of God, the beneficent, the merciful, God bless us with a successful meeting and bless us to get through this smoothly. And we ask this in the name of all your righteous servants. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Okay, first up on our agenda, we will have actually a presentation from Lauderback and Amon. Every year we have our annual audit, so Mr. Barron. Sorry, Mr. Barron will come. He's from the group that audits us. In previous years, we would have the presentation on the same day that the vote came in, with the work by Mr. Barron and as well as Chris and the administration. We were able to get them out ahead of time so that we'll have a little bit of time to digest the information and then before voting on it on our next upcoming meeting. So thank you for coming. Please feel free to go through the analysis that you have for the Village of Dolton, and if you can too. We recently had discussions about a forensic audit going in. We did discuss that we have an annual audit, so if you can kind of go over a little bit the scope of what you do look into, and then also go into your findings, please.
Okay. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm Matt Barron, the partner that oversaw your audit again this year. Thank you for having me. Tonight we're presenting on the audit from the fiscal year ended April 30th, 2019. How we got to tonight, so kind of touch on a little bit of the audit process. So as your auditors here, we are financial statement auditors. We are doing, in order to come up with an opinion whether your financial statements are materially correct. And as part of that process, what that means is we start at the beginning, we do some internal control testing at your preliminary field work. What that internal control testing is, we're doing walkthroughs on your major cycles, and that would be your cash receipts, cash disbursements, payroll, utility billing, those types of significant areas of where transactions go through the Village of Dolton. From there, we are determining whether you have an adequate internal control framework in place to help prevent fraud. So we're looking not specifically for fraud, we're looking for that there's a framework in place to help prevent it, if that makes sense. So if we're able to conclude that you have an adequate internal control framework in place, that is going to help us to conclude whether the numbers in here are accurate. Okay, so then step two, we then come back to do actual field work. And when we're doing field work, we're testing your numbers to make sure that they appear reasonable. Okay. From there, the last thing is we go through the audit report itself and make sure this report is in compliance with all government accounting standards. And that's how we're able to come up to the conclusion we're able to provide you an opinion. When you're talking a forensic audit, that is a very detailed approach to an audit where there's really no scope. You are digging down to every single detailed item, which can, one, be very time extensive, which when you know time equals money, so that can be very expensive. So it depends on what it is that you're looking for as far as a forensic audit goes and what you're trying to conclude or what you're even trying to figure out with that. Because I know it's a very sexy term anymore to say, I want to have a forensic audit done. Like, but what does that really mean? What are you trying to accomplish with that? Because it's, it's the catchphrase that everyone is using, a forensic. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you need to have what it is you're trying to accomplish with it, because those scopes can get very wide and then go very deep into the details. Does that make sense? Yes. Does that answer your question appropriately for that part of it? Okay.
It answers for me, yeah.
Okay. So as far as what I said, we're the financial statement auditors. We're here to make sure that this audit report is materially correct, or in other words, the numbers in here are what they say they are. So I'm going to take us and walk through this audit report, hit the highlights in here. I'd encourage you, if at any point in time you have any questions, please feel free to ask. You don't have to wait till the end. Just spit it out, let me know if you have some questions. So we'll go through this, and then the management letter is the second document that we create as part of our audit. And that's additional information just to let you know about as far as comments for implementation here at the village. So we'll walk us through the significant pages here within the audit report. Let's go on to page 1. That is this opinion page that we are talking about. So this is the thicker of the two documents, Trustee Steve. It's got the Lauterbach name and letterhead on it. This is your opinion page. We gave the village a unmodified opinion again this year. It's the highest opinion that we provide. What we're saying with that opinion is the numbers in here are what they say they are, that you do have an adequate control framework in place, and the financial statements are in compliance with all government accounting standards. 2 pages after that, we have the management discussion and analysis starting on page 3. What this section is a narrative summary of everything that's within this audit report. So if you want to read what happened, this would be the area to go, because you guys have a whole bunch of pages. You got 100 and something odd pages of this thing, so you can read at a high level what happened within this year within this section. Since I'm going to be covering that within my presentation, let's flip on past this whole section and let's get to the fund level financials. I'd like to take us all the way to page 19. On pages 19 and 20, these are your fund level financials. So this is your governmental funds. So all of your funds that are not considered businesses, which are your water fund, your recreation fund. These are all of your other funds. And this is the fund level that you guys do your budgets on. So this is what you're really tracking as far as how we're doing within our how the financial picture is looking. So far right-hand side, your totals, your grand totals across all your governmental funds. Second number up on the bottom, you can see we have a total fund balance of $6 million. Your main driving fund here, go to the far left-hand side, your general fund, you see we have a positive $94,000. So this is very important that I'm saying we have a positive $94,000, far left-hand column, second number up from the bottom. Second number up from the bottom. Yep. So we're at 94,000. That's our total fund balance. So where are we at? Once we take the assets at the top minus your liabilities that you owe, what do we have left? That's the fund balance. We're at 94,000, and that's a very key number that this is positive. That number has not been positive at the Village of Dolton in many years. So this is a very good thing that we're going to touch on once we get into the income statement. So how did we do this year? Let's go forward to page 22 and 23. On page 22 and 23, this is your income statement. Again, I want to take us to a far right-hand side, the totals. Third number up from the bottom on page 22 and 23. So on page 23, third number up from the bottom, we have a total increase this year of $2.3 million. So far right-hand side, third number up. When you take all the funds, you add them together, we're at $2.3 million increase. How did this happen? Let's go over and look at our general fund, our main fund. We had a total increase this year of $3.5 million. Which led us to being in the hole. As you can see, we were in the hole $3.4 million, and now we're up to $94,000 positive. How this happened, revenues, we came in significantly over budget by about $5 million. These revenues were up $3 million from last year to this year. Expenditures, however, were slightly over budget by about $1.6 million. We still had a decrease from the year prior of $1 million. We were over budget this year by the 1.6 due to public safety expenses that occurred during the year. Ultimately, as you add all these things up, like I said, we had a total increase of $3.5 million to come to this positive fund balance. Any questions about these before we go to the water fund? Yes, Chris?
One item with the public safety, that was over budget due to the pension contribution, because in last year's budget, you guys didn't include the pension contribution, so that's why you guys were over budget for pension. So the reason why you were over budget for public safety was because of the pension contribution, because in the fiscal 19 budget, we didn't include the pension contributions in the budget amounts. So that's the main reason you guys were over budget for fiscal 19. Otherwise, you guys would have been on track to be in budget for fiscal 19.
And to piggyback off of that, that pension expense is an expense neutral expense. And the reason I say that is revenue comes in from your pension levy and then goes immediately out. You never actually see that money within the village's bank accounts because it gets deposited directly into the pension fund. So it's an end of the year adjustment that occurs because we need to give the village the rights or that you made the levy to be able to provide the money over. You got credit for making the levy and giving the money to the pension fund, even though the pension fund received it directly to them.
The amount of overtime didn't have nothing to do with that as well?
I mean, you had overtime this year, but the significant bulk of the 1.6 million would have been this pension fund, if that's what Chris is saying.
I know you mentioned the general fund. How about the water fund?
We'll get to that in the next couple pages. So if you guys are good on these, then we can move forward to water. So let's go forward to page 25 and 26. Pages 25 and 26 include your business type funds. So what this means is these funds are acting like a business. They're supposed to be self-sustaining, where their revenues that are coming in are going to pay for all the expenses. We want to see positive fund balances in these funds. So, and we're including all of our long-term assets and liabilities in here. Okay, so again, let's go to the bottom of page 26. Left-hand column is our water fund. Last number, you see we have a total negative within our water fund of minus $2.4 million at the end of the year. So, how do we do this year? Well, in a lot of that, if you can see, as far as our expenses go, or our liabilities go, the City of Chicago payable is on your books here at this level of $7.8 million. So that's the significant payable that's on the books, bringing this liability to where it is. So how do we do this year? We can go forward to page 27. Yes.
Okay, so you're saying the 7.8 million in the water fund that we owe is weighing heavily on the 2.4 million
the fund
deficit.
Balance, yeah.
So
Because
absent that, the water fund would have been in good position, but because of that liability we're in.
Right, because I mean, that would have been payables or payments that would have occurred during the year, or it's amounts that you owe to Chicago. So any assets that you have get balanced off against those liabilities to come up to that fund balance. So how do we do this year? We'll go forward to page 27. On page 27, water fund is the far left-hand column, third number up from the bottom. We had a total increase of about $27,000. Ultimately, this is progress of compared to what has been in the past. This has been a negative amount in before, so having a positive 27 is good. And as far as if we look at budget, when we're comparing revenues and expenses against the budget, both were extremely consistent against the budget. So this fund operated in a way that was expected during the year. Anything to add to that? So we're still in the hole ultimately at the end of the year, so we need to keep working itself out, but the fact that we're finally getting to a positive position, that's the step in the right direction to get this fund where it needs to go and be paying down that Chicago payable. Any questions about those till we talk pension funds? No, because that's very true. So those are, go forward to page 29, please. 29 and page 30. So these are the last two financials I'm going to cover within this audit report. So this is your pension funds. This is the combination of what you've put aside for the pension for both police and fire. These are both together here within these financials here on 29 and 30. In the back, you can find them separated out, but I'm just going to talk about them here together. In total, your pension funds, we have a total net position, so the bottom number on page 29 of $40.5 million. Again, let's go over to page 30. We show our income statement of how these funds did. Third number up from the bottom, we had a total increase during the year of $1.4 million. This has a lot to do with how the market was this year. We had a very good market within fiscal year 2019, so we had a nice net change in fair value as it relates to the investments within this pension fund. Ultimately, when we look at pension funds, what we are caring about is how funded are these liabilities compared to what the actuary is telling you. So how much money have you put aside versus how much you owe? That's always the key when you're talking, when you hear people talk about it, how funded are you? At the end of the year, police, this year we went from the prior year, we were 49% funded. At the end of this year, we're at 65% funded. A lot of this had to do, I believe, with the change in the COLA increase assumption from 4% cost of living adjustment to 3%. You changed your adjustment of how much cost of living adjustment was going to be provided to the police pension going forward to allow this not going to be as significant of an expense towards, future payments out if you lower that assumption. Fire, we went from 46% funded to 49% funded. Again, that had a lot to do with how the investments did during the year. We had a positive year. Let's go forward. I'd like to show us one more thing of what is important with pension funds. Let's go forward to page 85 and 86. So as I'm talking about how percent funded you are, that has to do with your contributions that are going into these pension funds, so what it is that you're levying for, compared to what the actuary is saying that you should pay in to be able to get yourself fully funded. So on these, you can see this one column that's actuarial determined contribution. It keeps going up, up, up each year. And that's consistent with how every municipality is seeing it. This is part of what has always been talking about the pension crisis here is the expenses keep going up, 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 and it's been very difficult for municipalities to keep up with the rise of the pension costs. Contributions, you can see in the second column. So for police pension, you contributed $981,000 versus what was asked for by the actuary of $1.5 million. So we're short by $551,000. Obviously, that's not ideal. But I do want to point out, though, that contributions, you can see the big jump in contributions that the village made from last year, 2018 to 2019. We went from $721,000 to $981,000. So the village made a big effort during this year to up that, but we still have a little bit to go to try to keep with what the actuary is telling us to do. Does that make sense? So it's going to be hard to dig yourself completely out of the hole until we get this up higher. And the same thing as you look on page 28, or 86, I'm sorry, for fire pension. Again, the far left-hand column, you can see actuarial determined contribution keeps going up, up, up each year to $855,000. Contributions this year, we went all the way up to $714,000. So we went from $457,000 to $715,000. So a huge jump as far as what was contributed. So obviously that's great progress that the village is making. However, we're still short as far as what the actuary is saying by about $141,000. So making progress again, it's looking good. Keep going in that direction, but this is a problem that municipalities are seeing across the board as far as the actuarial ask being higher and higher all the time. Yep.
Actuary based on GASB rules or statutory rules?
GASB rules. So in order to be 100% funded.
That means that statutorily, the pension funds need to be 90% funded by 2040. So these numbers are based on the GASB rules, which don't follow the same as the statutes of being funded by 2040, 90%. So there's two different pictures as to when you're looking at it. One is what the statutes require, and then one is what GASB's rules require.
Obviously, this one is more the best practices. The other one that Chris is talking about is what the state is asking for. So if you're just following along with the state of Illinois, you can, that's not always the best way to go about your business if you want to follow along with just what the state of Illinois is saying. So this is what the best practices are, is to contribute up to this level. And that was all as far as the audit report goes. Before I touch on the management letters, anybody have any questions about these?
I don't have any questions. Once we go through the management, I'm going to do a brief pause because I don't want to hold you here the entire time. So I will open for any residents that have questions. They don't have access to the financials that we do, but there may still be some. So we'll ask questions specifically on the audit immediately after your presentation, and then we'll go in through the rest of our agenda from there.
Okay. Management letter, I touched on it at the beginning. What this is, it's additional information we're providing to management, to the board, of what we saw during the audit as far as recommendations that we would like to see implemented as far as operations go, or I kind of break these up into three different parts or three different types. Informational, so things that we just want you to know about, new accounting standards, those types of things, best practices that we see out in the industry, or true internal control issues we want to see implemented. As far as what we have this year, you can see we have no section that is current recommendations, and what that means is we had no new management letter comments provided this year. So it was very clean as far as we had nothing new that we found this year as related to management letter comments. As far as prior goes, we had 14 management letter comments that we gave in the prior year. 2 were implemented during this year, so we have 12 that are still outstanding in some way, as whether they have been partially implemented or we still have work to go in order to implement them. A lot of them have had progress made on these, and we have a status update management response under each one to note what Chris and his team have been working on in order to get them implemented. So I wasn't planning on going through this thing one by one. I've done that a couple times in the past, and some of these are the same comments, so I wasn't sure if you wanted me to do that or just if you had any questions about them, I'd be happy to answer.
Anybody want to go through them one by one?
Yes.
All right, so,
One of my questions.
Yeah, one, yeah.
yeah, not a big deal.
Okay, the surface level, we're reading it, and then if there's something to dig deeper in, we'll
Not a big deal.
have questions.
First one related to a new accounting standard that was implemented within this current audit report. So that one has been fully implemented. It was GASB 75 related to post-employment benefits. Number 2, as we're getting into the section that's called significant accounting policies. First one was capital asset policy and appraisal. The village implemented a new capital asset policy a year or so ago. Yeah. So now step 2 for this one in order to implement is to do a capital asset appraisal across the village to know what all assets are owned by the village, and this includes all the way down to streets and sewer lines and those types of things to be able to get all of your assets on the books. That's a standard that GASB expects within GASB 34. And it would obviously help your fund balance because then you would be showing significantly more assets on your books as well, because you're missing a lot that you guys actually own. Right?
Yeah, you just have to do evaluations, and you
Yeah.
can go out, have someone value all your assets, so all the cars, see what they're worth, that kind of stuff.
Yep. Number 2, related to missing invoices. There was just a few areas that we had some invoices that were missing that we asked for in testing. I'm going to say it was better than years past. The record keeping is improving year after year. There was just a few invoices that were unable to be found, which, maybe with more time would have been able to been obtained from a vendor. But at this point in time, when we went through the audit, there were a few missing. So Chris and his team are making progress on this this management letter finding. Number 4. This relates to funds not in compliance with your fund balance policy. Village had implemented a fund balance policy that was is 25% when you're comparing your fund balance to your expenditures. We have 3 funds that are still outside of your fund balance policy. So let's go forward to the next page where it shows the 2019 numbers, because it was the same between 2018 to 2019. These 3 funds are general fund, TIF 2, and water fund. So which should not come as a big surprise, since I kind of pointed out general fund, we've made progress, but we're still not all the way there yet. We just cracked this, scratched the surface of getting over 0. Water fund as well, we talked about still being negative. And then TIF 2, we have a negative fund balance in that fund as well. Moving forward to the next one. The use of motor fuel tax and restricted funds. Motor fuel tax, TIF and TIF money, those are separate funds that cannot be used for any other purpose than for motor fuel expenses or for TIF expenses. The village had borrowed money from those funds in the past because of shortages within the general fund as far as cash flow goes. Now the village needs to turn around and get those things paid back to those funds in order to It's been tracked. It's not like the money's been lost, so I don't want anybody to think that the village used it and we're not keeping track of it. It's more the money was used, and now we got to pay those monies back.
Okay. If we can stop there. When you say it was used, was this during the previous fiscal year or in years past?
Previous fiscal years.
In previous fiscal years. So in the fiscal year that just passed, there was no use of those funds, but years past, we have to report it until we repay it.
You have to report it till you're repaid, because it's still a liability within the general fund until the money has been able to be moved back.
Okay.
So we made our first progress this year as far as cash flow goes within the general fund. So we're going to keep going to get these things paid back. Number 6 relates to that one in some ways. We have a few other funds that are not restricted monies, but other ones that we have interfunds between funds where one fund borrowed money from another fund and just hasn't been paid back yet. And they've been outstanding for a long time, and we've asked the team, obviously they have a lot of fires that they've been putting out, to start researching those things and see how we can start getting those paid back. Or in some cases, they may be things that were things that could be forgiven, but we just have to get a look into them to know what they are. Number 7, this one relates to the pension funds as far as funding goes. I touched on it in pretty great detail during my presentation as far as keep building that amount that you're contributing towards your pension funds. Number 8, relates also to those interfunds that we talked about. This one is very specific to the pension funds. It's not usually a recommended thing to have monies owed between a village and a pension fund. So we want those investigated in particular, and we set those aside, kind of like the restricted funds, to say these interfunds are outstanding. They were there a long time ago. Let's look into them, why they're there, and try to get them paid back. Debt service, number 9. This one is getting better. I think we're going to be getting to a much more reasonable level. A few years ago, in general with debt service, this is a fund that should go in and out. Okay, you have money coming in to pay for debt, and then you have money going out to pay, like once it's paid. Okay, money coming in from property taxes, and then it gets shot out right away to the debt, to pay for the debt. The fund balance had gotten very large of many years, like a few years ago, when the other funds did not have money, so it was kind of an outlier of why is this fund accruing extra money within it. So we had called it out. Now the accounting is in a much better shape as far as allocating the property taxes correctly. I think we have it where it's using this fund balance down, so this one will probably be going away soon. 10, funds with deficit fund balances, relates to that fund balance policy. This one is separate as far as we want to call out to you anytime a fund is negative. TIF 2 and water fund are the 2 that are negative. So just stating that again. Funds over budget. So we touched on the general fund as being a fund that was over budget this year. What this management letter comment is we are supposed to notify the board anytime any fund is over budget, just to make sure you are aware of it, because you obviously set a budget at the beginning of the year and you want to know if your expenses exceeded those. So we have a handful of funds here. General fund, which we talked about, motor fuel, debt service. TIF 2 is so small, that's not a big deal. TIF 3 and sewer fund that all ended up going over budget. And Chris and his team have a pretty in-depth management response towards these comments, or towards this comment.
When you say over budget, does that mean in a deficit, surplus, or in either direction?
It means that you said you were going to spend, let's just use round numbers to be easy. You said you were going to spend $10 million in your general fund, and you spent 11 instead.
Okay.
So you went over what you said you were going to spend. It has nothing to do with the revenues. It's just strictly expenses.
All right.
Number 12, I-94 Sibley TIF. That fund, it expired. TIFs have 23 years until they expire, and then any additional surplus within that fund is supposed to get contributed over to the county. So this fund has expired. We're stating that it has been closed, and now it's time to look into review sending that money over to the county, the excess surplus. However, the management response is that they have they're going through whether there were any additional expenses that should have been reimbursed back to that fund before it does get closed. Use of loan proceeds, this was a comment from the past and is no longer, it's been fully implemented. And number 14, last one, relates to financial condition. This was more pronounced a few years ago when you had such a negative general fund and a very significantly negative water fund. Obviously, we're making progress on those things. We're kind of turning the corner, but we do still have the negative fund balance within the water fund and that large liability with the city of Chicago. So it's kind of more of a call out that you've made progress, but we got to keep going and keep making progress to get the financial health of the village back to a very, an actually healthy position. So as you can see, a number of these kind of relate to each other in kind of different angles as far as the health of the way things are going. And as I've stated, it was a good positive year that things seem to be going in the right direction. So hopefully that momentum can continue.
Questions from the board?
I have none.
Okay. Overall, you mentioned a healthy position for the village of Dolton. Lay opinion, well, not lay, but opinion. Are we on a financially good footing?
We're on the right track.
Erie?
We're on the right track.
Track.
We're on the right track. We're making significant progress from, we've been your auditor for what, 6 years or something, and this is by far the healthiest position we've been in at the village of Dolton up until this point.
Okay. I am going to pause to, while the residents may not have had the report, they may have some questions that I did not outline. So if there are any questions, please ask, because I don't want to tie up our audit longer than necessary.
Hello, my name is Beth, and
Hi, Beth.
my question is, for the state of Illinois and regulations, what are the regulations for elected civil officials and reimbursement of expenses? What are those rules and laws?
That is a very complicated one. So there's a travel policy that needed to have been implemented that follow along with these state regulations. The state regulations ultimately need to still go back to what the IRS standards are. They can't provide themselves too significantly of a better benefit than what the IRS allows. Ultimately, as with anything, what is reimbursed needs to be costs that are legitimate and reasonable for the village, that are getting approved as far as their normal course of business, that they're not just personal expenses, cannot be run through to be reimbursed back.
I'm going to work this way to this way if it's okay. Okay.
Hi, good evening. Quick question. The balance left on Chicago, is it $7.8 million?
1 second. That was the short-term part of it. The entire amount, so the entire amount is $8.5 million. $8,486,343.
One more question here. You also mentioned, I can't read my writing. The motor fuel tax,
Yes.
that we borrowed money from that,
Yep.
that have not been paid back.
Yep.
And also, I'm inquiring about TIF 2, the general fund, and I know about the water. And the general count of the funds that have not been paid back. Do you have any idea of how much that money we owes?
Yeah. Motor fuel tax, so general fund owes motor fuel $2 million. Just rounding it, it's around $2 million. General fund owes the Sibley TIF fund $2.5 million, and then TIF 3, general fund owes TIF 3 $336,000.
How far does that go back?
these amounts that we owe? How far?
I'm not sure. It's been a while.
It's been a while?
Yeah.
Okay.
As well?
Good evening. Just a quick question.
Yes.
The report that you're giving us this evening is a financial audit, correct?
Yes.
So there's a difference in the financial audit and a forensic, correct?
Yes.
So to piggyback on what Ms. Beth asked you about the state regulations, the forensic audit would, excuse me, would detail if the processes are in place so that the reporting of any expenses are done correctly, and if we do have those processes.
That's closer to what we did as the financial statement auditors, to give an overview on the internal controls, that there are internal controls in place towards them. What a forensic audit would do, they would go through and look at every single expense reimbursement that occurred during the year, to dive into them in great detail, whether they were all reasonable.
So can you answer, if we do in fact have those processes in place, how reimbursements are done?
Yeah, I mean, there are processes in place that get approved through, and Chris could probably speak better to it as far as how the process goes. But there are processes in place towards expense reimbursement.
Okay.
I want to see if anybody else.
Good evening. Apologies if this was asked earlier, spoke about, but on the notes, the front page,
That's not the audit, that's a different report.
so I can't ask that or no?
No, I mean, well, Chris presented that, so we'll go through that through the monthly financials.
Cool.
So Chris, you're gonna have a question. Well,
You also mentioned invoices that are missing. Can you elaborate on what are they?
I believe there was some liability insurance invoices that were missing, and a handful of other ones. I mean, in general, we're trying to say that we would like, if we ask for them, we should get them all back. It's not unusual that certain ones, based on how the flow of work goes, that sometimes they do just go missing. But we're just encouraging, continue to work on that process to keep the record keeping, keep improving it so that they're all there when we ask for them.
I got a question about that. Just to piggyback on that then, so if you are missing invoices and they are from insurance or reputable companies, what is the process of giving them a certain amount of time to try to obtain duplicates of them?
So we are able to do some alternative procedures as well, tying back to bank statements, check copies, those types of things, looking at the amounts that occurred, comparing them to other amounts that occurred month to month. So we can verify as we look at it that the amounts, quote unquote, appear reasonable to what we're expecting. If we're seeing big spikes in amounts, if we're seeing unusual expenses that we're like, what is that? Why did that occur? That doesn't make any sense. Those would be ones we would force the team to, you've got to get these to us, otherwise this is a big problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Last question for me. We also are missing $300,000 from the Park District. Did you include that in your audit report this year also?
I believe it's a footnote that's been there each year. I think it's within the financial statements somewhere. I forget where that's at. It's been such an old amount, I usually don't cover it in here or discuss it, but I believe it's still within the audit report.
63.
Page 63? Yeah, it's still noted on page 63, loans to other governments, that they still owe $300,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if that concludes questions for the auditor, we still will have citizens address, but I wanted to hone in on this and thank them for the time. So we have a little bit of time before our next meeting to digest. Going once, twice. I'm sitting. Thank you for your time. We
Yes.
appreciate you coming out.
All right.
And I
you,
think
everybody.
that concludes it. Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, so with that being said, thanks for all the hard work being done to get that in, as well as Chris and the administration for working with auditors to complete the process. This was for our fiscal year, which ended April 30th of 2019. So Guess we're going to be starting to work on this again soon. All right, next thing we're going to go to, as we still have our monthly agenda. Do you have a packet? I have a packet for the financial. You want to grab one, or if we're out, I can go look on here. The bond payment? Oh, the status two. Okay, yeah, those are quick. So while we're before going into, I'm going to bypass the monthly financial report for just a moment while Trustee Steve grabs those for us. The quick points that spoke with Chris about in terms of making sure that we're on status for our bond payment. We actually made the payment last year in December of 2019. So the next payment that we'll have to make on our bond will be December of this year. Since a lot of the proceeds that go towards that bond payment come out of our property taxes, we don't anticipate having any money going into that account until we receive our property taxes. So we are on track. However, that on track means as of February, we don't have any money in that account. When property taxes do come in, we will make the transfers. We will make the transfers into the bond accounts to make sure that we remain on track, and we'll continue to track the progress on that. Chris.
Most of your remaining bonds are escrowed, so the property taxes automatically get deposited into each of the accounts. So the village won't receive any of those monies. They automatically get deposited into a separate bank account to make the payment.
Thank you. Okay. And Trustee, if I can grab that one, because I want to run through. Oh, here we go. So, yeah, we're going through the monthly financials, which is where we landed at the end of January 31st, 2020. We're going to go through three funds, the two that we typically go through, which is our general fund and our water fund, and then we also will discuss the Melanie Fitness Center account, as we mentioned at the previous board meeting, and we'll continue to monitor that in months going forward. So, in looking at the revenues versus expenses of the general fund, we're going to go to page 11. Now, page 11, looking at our expenditures, right below the expenditures, our excess deficiency of revenues minus expenses for the month of January, we had a little bit over $1 million loss for the month of January, putting our fiscal year-to-date revenues versus expenses at a loss of $1.6 million. Comparing that to the budget, we budgeted that at this time we expected to be at $1.2 million deficit. So, in talking with Chris about the deficit, one of the major components, we know that we get our property taxes. That's the bulk of our income. So, in August and September, we're going to be up. Towards the end of the fiscal year, again, we're going to receive another increase. However, during these months, we're living a lot off of the property tax revenue and some of the sales tax revenues to make it cash flow wise. So the anticipation is by the end of this year, we will have a surplus again. However, at this time, we're down, and we did have a big adjustment with our workman's comp insurance. So as some may recall, we had the discussion about workman's comp in December. Because there was a unexpected increase in workman's comp of about $300,000. We paid $500,000 over the last 2 months to workman's comp, so that accounts for a large difference in what we budgeted for. Did I word that well, Chris? Yep. Okay. So, and in saying that, with the expectation still being that we're going to have a surplus every month, we want to make sure that we are thoroughly watching this to make sure that what we project actually occurs, and if not, we'll need to make adjustments. Questions from the board?
None so far.
And as residents, please, questions, jot them down, highlight them, and then during citizens' address, feel free to ask, please. Next fund we want to go to is the water fund, where we'll be on page 14. And actually page 13 is where we have the operating income showing for the month a surplus of $86,152. Fiscal year to date, a surplus in the water fund, just over $1 million. So in the water fund, it would appear that we're holding course in that account. Any questions from the board? Third fund to look at The Melanie Fitness Center. Page 18. So for the fitness center, looks like we had a nice increase in revenue. We made $23,000 of revenue for the month. We did have $39,000 worth of expenses. So for the month, it's a deficit of $16,000. Year to date, $215,000 deficit. I believe at the last month we discussed having at least $13,000 in revenue, so we exceeded that. We wanted to keep expenses to $25,000, so the expense side was still much higher than anticipated. So that's half empty, half full. I'm going to ask the residents to chime in on that, but Trustee Steve, I don't know if you had any thoughts or comments, 'cause I know that is one of your passions. That will make sure that we keep mindful on what's happening there and everybody, and keep account of that, of the Melanie Fitness. So that and all the other funds are also listed within this within the report. So any questions on any of these, please feel free to ask questions during the citizens address. But with no questions from the board, we're going to move forward to the status of our water bill payments. Again, this is just a footnote. I always might bring it on here so that way we keep in communication with our finance team and everybody and let the community know. We do make monthly payments to the city of Chicago as required to keep current with our bill. The back payment that we owe to the city of Chicago is paid once a year with our second installment of property taxes around September. So that is not due. We are current with the last year. So at this moment, we are current with all obligations with the city of Chicago. Point number 4 is the uncollected balances from the water bills. Towards the back of the report, page 34. No, that's not 34. Hold on. Page 35 gives a summary of the amount of money that is outstanding or uncollected for the village. Bottom right is $4,222,000 of uncollected water. If you look in there, from 1 to 30 days, $450,000, but those are new bills, so those likely will go down within District 2. They must have just received them. 31 to 60 days, no big concern. 61 to 90, District 3 has a spike, nothing big, and the majority of the outstanding bills are 90 to 120 and then 120 over. We did speak some with Chris about identifying which one should go to collections and how do we clear up anything that may be uncollectible to give us a more realistic picture. They are going through verifying the actual debts, seeing which ones can be collected, and by next month's meeting we'll give a target date of when we can expect that the 120 and over category can be kind of filtered and cleaned up. Questions again, board?
How are we collecting this, the unpaid balances? Are we using a different format to collect it? I know once we spoke about possibly getting it through when people file their income tax. So are we still on the same page with that?
What we're working on.
What we're working on doing is before we can send them to the collection agency that you guys utilize to collect for you guys, we have to verify that all of the information that we have in the system, that is the correct name and address of the person. Once we have that done and the balance is correct and they're shut off, and that this is the final, let's say it's $1,000, we confirm that this resident, this person, this business, this account is $1,000. Then once we confirm all that, then we can send it to the collection agency for them to start doing their work of collecting on behalf of the village. We're working through that process to get all that confirmation in place.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Okay, now Chris, I'm going to ask one more. Next thing up being new business, the Homewood Disposal Bond. This bond is a bond that we do take out every year to supplement, so that way we're not financially tight on our cash flow. So we do take this bond out annually. It's generally in the range of about 3%, if I'm not mistaken, 3 to 4% of interest that we do pay on the bond. Last year, was the bond last year 1.3 or 1.4 million? 1.4. Okay, so the request for a bond being done, and we discussed it some at the committee of the whole, but we wanted to have further discussion from either for the board's clarity as well as for residents to chime in. The request is that there be another $1.4 million bond extended to cover. It's a one-year bond, the Homewood Disposals, which is our garbage pickup. The alternative to taking out this bond is if we do not, then a lot of the money that we do use within our general fund will be diverted to make sure that the garbage is paid, the garbage bill is paid, which could put us in a tight financial position throughout the course of the year. Having said that, we'll ask Chris if he has a thought on if there's a way to gradually decrease the bond, or is that something that we probably have to work on in the budget cycle?
I would say it's a little bit of both. So as we're doing our budgeting, we would need to work it in there. But also, one of the things that you guys do is to decrease how much interest you pay. We try to pay as early as possible. So whenever we get real estate taxes in, we do make an early payment on the bond. So let's say the schedule is June 1st is when the payment is. If we have sufficient property tax money in the account, we make the payment early, decreasing how much the village pays on their debt.
Questions with the board? Okay, and then last but not least, item number 2 under new business is the zoning specifications of the cannabis ordinance. This also came up on the committee of the whole meeting, so we brought it here for further discussion. The ordinance has been passed by the board in December, so that we would have enough time or notice, so that if there were some interest in companies that wanted to set up cannabis dispensaries within the village of Dolton, that we would allow it. This discussion was rewording of the original ordinance, which specified the zones that the dispensaries or anyone doing cannabis business can do. So the wording in there says that it can be allowed within any commercial zone, any area already zoned for commercial within the village of Dolton. There is a caveat. The state of Illinois has already put in place the number of feet that it can be from a school or a nursery or nursery facility, so that is already statutorily written in, and the vote will be, are we okay with it being in all commercially zoned areas, or are there areas that we would like to have carved out from the ordinance? In speaking with Clerk Dugan, there are some entities that have expressed some interest. I have not gotten a list of those entities just yet, but there is some. So the reasoning behind wanting to have this vote move forward is that should that interest catch fire and we want to move forward, we want to make sure the ordinance is in place to have things done. So with that being stated, I want to ask the board if they had a chance to review. Any questions?
I had a chance to look at it. We can move forward with it.
Forward.
Okay, and so that concludes the agenda items or presentation. With that being said, citizens' address is next up. Please, any that have questions, feel free. And this is a broad spectrum. Trustee Steve.
Chris, can you explain why this other professional service amount was so big at Melanie Fitness this month? On 18.
So this month of January, we had 3 payrolls for the village. So that's why it was so much larger, because there were 3 payrolls. And that's where all the instructors get paid out that operate at the village. I can't tell you the exact numbers, but that's pretty much it. You had 3 payrolls.
That third payroll wasn't there, that big chunk would be there.
Yeah. That's why part of your guys' overall increase in payroll for this month of January for all funds was for the 3rd payroll.
Because The revenue this month, in January was the biggest month we had in the last maybe 3 years, which was $23,000. So, but that big chunk of the third payroll really hit us. Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Belcher?
Good evening. I have a
Hold your mic down.
I got a few questions. I'm going to try to make them as quickly as possible. Can you hear me? Okay. First off, hello? Y'all can hear me? Oh, okay. The first question, since we were talking about the Melanie Fitness Center, and the only reason I'm asking this because it was brought up at the board meeting in reference to these competitions. So are we allocating money for these competitions that they're having, that they're paying out these $1,000 for? Is that included in this?
Not thousands.
I mean, if you
we had
have 4 of them a year.
We didn't have 4 of them. We're not going to have no more
I'm
either.
just saying.
We only had 2 more. We only had 2 of them.
I'm asking.
But what I did was, and it was a $1,000 weight loss challenge. It was a way of promoting and marketing the gym. And we did 2 of them, and both of them we got an increase of maybe 15 new members, and that part of it was because that's why the income this past month was so big, because we did a lot of different things to promote the gym and promote people coming to get memberships. However, on the $1,000 weight loss challenge, in my haste of trying to promote the gym, I handled it wrong. The communications was wrong, so that's what happened. But what I'm asking the board to do is the people that won is that we pay them out of the Melanie Fitness budget, and that will be on the warrant list as upcoming.
Okay, my
Monday.
question was, though, just for future reference or now, was that allocated in the budget for those competitions? That was the question. Was it allocated in the budget?
No.
Okay.
And in the future, we're not doing no more.
Okay, that was my question. Also, with the collection, from the collection agencies, if y'all move forward with using collection agency to obtain these funds that you're seeking to get, because I know you kind of mainly talked about the water department, but with any debt that's owed to the village, then what do you know the percentage of it, and is that being used for any debt or only for water?
To my knowledge, we used it for the red light tickets and the water fund.
We use the collection agency for all debts of people who are owed money for the village, and that's for anything from a parking citation to a red light ticket. As far as I'm aware, anything that someone would owe money to the village, they get sent to collection.
So is it just consumers or is it businesses also?
I'm not sure on that.
Okay. The reason I asked that because somebody asked about the park owing the village some money. So has any legal action been taken or collection? That's the only reason I asked that question. But I wanted to know. Also, with the homewood disposal for the bond, I know that our disposal fee is in our water bill. And it seems like we're consistently taking this bond out every year like it's become a crutch. So have we looked into what part that we charge citizens, myself, what part we charge as the trash that has maybe increased? Because they say, oh, we're increasing the water, and although the trash is included, have we looked at, okay, we have 9,800 in some houses that were billed for at $50 or whatever, however, whatever the amount is, that not to say we want another increase, but so we can stop using this as a crutch to keep getting bonds every year. I guess that's my question.
So we do look into if the rate that we charge or the village charges covers how much the bill is, but then there's also the consideration of collection. If the village only collects 80%, even if, let's use simple math, we charge $100, Homewood charges the village $100, we charge, or the village charges the resident $100. If the village is only collecting $80, we're always short $20. And that's on every account. And I'm just using numbers for the simplicity of the math. But that's one of the problems we have, the village has.
Let me ask you then. But wouldn't that go with, if you're not collecting the water bill, you're not collecting the garbage bill?
Correct.
So, there you have it. You're still not getting money for the water or the trash. So we still at a minus if we don't collect those funds.
And well, what I will tell you on there is, I think as we're going through the budget cycle, and which was to my question, how do we decrease? Because the goal is, we know that there's going to be uncollected and there'll be some collected. We don't want it to be a crutch, but we also have to be mindful of what our day-to-day needs are. So I think as we go into the budget cycle, we do want to look at ways that next year we get it from 1.4 to 1.2 and 1.2 to 1 million.
Right.
So that, so I do hear your concern.
Right. Only reason I'm asking that, and these are concerns, is because we still are paying a water bill that we already know that's excessive. So regardless of if you collected 95% of the water repayment that we're on, payment plan, if you collected 95%, we'll still always be kind of in the negative right now because most of that money is going to a repayment plan. So I'm aware that I'm just asking a question for validation. My last question is, you stated that a lot of the money from our property tax, the first half normally is in the general fund, and then you said the second half goes to escrow for something. Is that not how? Is that what? Yeah, he said it went into the escrow. Like we wouldn't see it, it'll go into for the bond payments, right?
So on your property tax bill, there's the portion of the village. Well, the village has, let's keep it simple, 3 items: pensions, the portion that they use to operate, and then debt. The debt portion, the village has in previous years escrowed that amount so that portion the county knows, let's say it's $1 million, that portion of those taxes automatically, whenever someone pays it, so let's say you pay your bill, whatever portion is for the debt, that automatically gets set into a separate bank account that the village never even sees. It's like the pensions.
Okay. So is that for both the first half and the second half? Or
That's
just
for
the second
every
half?
future tax payment.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Okay. I want to go back to Homewood Disposable. Can you tell me exactly how much money you collect from the garbage that's being paid from the residents and the businesses? How much money do you receive, and what account do that money go into? Do it go into the water fund, the general fund, or where do it go? And how much
Water fund
is it?
That's the portion that gets billed, that's general fund, so that gets posted in the general fund, and it also gets deposited into the general fund.
Okay.
The dollar amount, I don't know that off the top of my head. I couldn't give you that number.
Can we?
No, because the refuse is an item that's budgeted in the general fund. It isn't transferred. Those refuse are items that are budgeted within the general fund, as is the expense for Homewood Disposal. So those are never transferred from the general fund because those are general fund revenues and expenses.
Okay, and so we're spending that water fund, the garbage money, however we want to spend it. And then we take out a bond for, to pay Homewood Disposable at one time. You confused?
She's probably asking.
I can ask what I'm asking. When the money come from the water fund for the garbage,
Yeah, I'm gonna tell it.
it go into the general fund.
Don't worry about it.
The money never comes from the water fund.
It never comes. It's going directly to Chicago.
No.
All of it.
So,
I'm just speaking of the garbage only.
So when you pay your water bill, the system already knows, let's keep it for simple math, $100, $20 is for your garbage. That $20 is automatically posted into the general fund.
That's what I asked.
It never touches the water or the sewer fund. They're totally separate.
Right. It go into the garbage money goes straight to the general fund. And how do we spend that money on whatever we need to spend it on?
Those are general fund revenues, can be used on general fund resources.
Okay, instead of going to the garbage. Okay. And then we just take out a bond.
Cool.
Okay.
I was going to speak on it. I just wanted to speak on it before I was cut off. Businesses do not have their garbage bill paid through the village. Businesses pay their garbage bill directly to the ones who pick it up. So any garbage money that's collected from businesses does not come to the village. It goes directly to that vendor. That's what I was trying to say. You said business.
I was talking about the residents.
Mr. Burris?
Good evening. One question. At the notes on the first page, in expenditures, expenses for Melanie Fitness Center are below the expected 75% for the year. In comparison to the budget, the expenses are higher than prior year amount. There will be a decrease in the expense when we capitalize the cost of placing the pool into operation of $23,000. Can you elaborate or clarify what do you mean when you say there will be a decrease in the expense when we capitalize the cost of placing the pool into the operation of $23,000?
So proper accounting standards requires that since the Melanie Fitness Center is a business type fund, anything that would be substantially improve the overall relation of that item would be capitalized, which means we record it as an asset. So the pool, we had to pay to get it into, or the village had to pay to get it into the operation again. So all of those funds are capitalized. We capitalize at the end of the year because then we have to start depreciating those assets. So if in the audit, we showed $20,000 that was the down payment to get it into operation as a, yeah. So it was shown that way. So once all of those payments are through, and I believe they are, then it will be capitalized and taken out of expense and recorded as an asset on the village's books.
Okay, I was want to clarify because I assume that meant when you say capitalize the cost of placing the pool in operation, meaning that you're projecting possible revenue from the operation, and that's not correct.
No.
Okay.
I think what he's saying is that we have the expense to get the pool. We don't have that expense again next year. So that'll be an extra, even though it was spent this year, it won't be spent again next year. I think it was up maybe $60,000 to get the pool going, which we won't have that expense next year. Yeah, it was pretty expensive.
So what is that $23,000?
I think it was 60, if I'm correct.
I thought it was around 40, but
40.
don't remember.
There's a lot of numbers, so I can't remember everything. But once, what will happen is it will decrease the expense and then it will be recorded as an asset on the books. So increasing the overall position of the Melanie Fitness Center.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I think we just brought up another quick issue. What is the 23,000 or the 40 or the, what is, yeah, what's that?
Part of getting the pool into operational, we had to make or the village had to make a down payment, and then they were on a payment plan to get it into operation because cash flow wise, making the entire payment at once was very difficult. So they went into a payment plan. That's the 23,000.
Are those additional payments, they're not included?
Payments was just for January. This month is just for January. This is just for January.
Right.
Okay. So it was more than 23,000.
It was 23,000 for the year.
Okay.
Or for as of January.
January. Okay.
So in January, I think it was the final payment. So I think the total of it was 23 from May through January.
Okay. Is there any way, I don't know if you, or,
We could probably confirm it, but not tonight.
yeah. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening. Okay, am I understanding this correctly, that the uncollected balance is going to go to a collection agency? Okay, now, first of all, my first question about that, how do we know those numbers are right? Because, see, we do know that the water, before you do this, you got to straighten out the water department. They roll back your meters, they roll up your meters, and don't tell me they don't, because I've experienced, my consumption hasn't been right since the beginning of the year. So how can you say, unless you watch your consumptions and you learn how to read your meter, or you know how to read your meter, how can you say they owe this? And plus the fact, what about the ones of us who are paying for consumptions that we don't use?
So the collection amount will first have to be over 120 days old. So the people that get their bills, there is back and forth with them. Part of the collection process, though, is the bill before getting sent there has to be verified because the collection agency wants to get their money as well.
No, I'm speaking of the consumptions. See, The water department will roll back your consumptions, roll up your consumption, so you don't even know if you owe this unless you look at your consumption and read your meter. So you might have somebody going to the collection agency who don't owe this. They put them into this position because, see, they meters will roll back like mine was, and they said I owe $3,000. So, I mean, how can you send somebody to a collection agency without knowing for sure if this is what they owe? The water department is terrible. If you ever talk to anybody from the water department other than Sanye, they talk to you like you're crazy. So how can you send somebody through this kind of grief not knowing that this is what they owe?
So the water department, I think many have agreement that there's issues in the water department. So I'm not speaking to that everything is 100% accurate, but we do have the bills that have gone on for 30, 60, 90 days, and we have the tracking out there has been sent to the resident as well. So the residents have the opportunity to look it over and verify and challenge the things that are it. So I'm not going to make the blanket assumption that they're all wrong. There is a verification process that we're going through as well with the older bills to see, do we have the right person, have the bills been checked and verified, and to this point, if we're at 160, 180, 365 days, it's been unchallenged. So we only have the option of leaving it out there and saying it may be wrong or sending it to collection. So I think for the older bills, that's where we're talking about the collection. Now, I'm not disputing that there are challenges on getting the correct consumption, and that's part two of fixing the water department. But on the collection process, and I'm asking if you hang with me because I think Trustee Steve had a comment as well. But
Trustee
that's my
Steve, you're supposed to have what happened to your meeting? Since you got to make a comment now.
Coming up next week. What I want to say, he just said it, that the collecting agency, before it gets sent out, it gets verified. Everything gets verified because the collecting agency don't want to send out a bill that really is not owed to them. So it's verified before.
Yes, they do, because they did it to me.
Okay. All right, well, I'm just saying that they're verified.
See, this is what I'm saying. Before you start sending people to grief, you need to take each person as an individual, go through their water bill to see if this is what they owe. Because, see, we know that the water department, their numbers aren't right. So why are you sending people through grief? I mean, you know, when they don't owe it. I don't use 10 consumptions of water. Then you want to turn up and add another 10 consumption on it. First you said Elizabeth, Sanye, and Janice, they decided to go up 10 consumptions. Then they said it was a computer glitch. Somebody's lying somewhere. Either it's a computer glitch or this is what you were trying to do, make us pay. You know.
So,
and it only affects seniors because we're on the fixed income. Well, everybody, but
I'm just going to recap. Now, I have no rebuttal whatsoever. I just want to, and so your recommendation for us is do not send these to the collection company until the water department is.
No, send them if they're correct, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
If they're correct. But if you, like somebody like me, who got roll back and back and forth, I didn't owe that money. But had I not been watching my consumption, I wouldn't know that. So, I know you have a list. So what you need to do is go down the list and see if this is what they really owe. You know.
Yeah. That's what we're saying. No. It's verified before they send out. It's verified. They go through everything before it's sent out. That's what I'm saying.
They sent me to the collection agency, not for the water, but for something else. And I guess, like you say, everything's verified before you go to the collection agency. They didn't verify me. I told them I wasn't paying it because I didn't know it, and didn't. It was verified through me, but not through the village of Dolton. So you send them all these people with this water bill. Before you do anything, you need to get that water department in order. You know, I can understand you got some people that may owe this, but why do you let people get that far behind? My neighbor behind me owed a $5,000 water bill. Now, how do you let somebody get down to a $5,000 water bill before you decide to say something? And maybe they did know it.
I have no disagreement with you. I'm hearing your input right now.
This because the water bill, my last water bill was wrong. I got it revised, and the only reason it was revised is because I said something about it at the board meeting. So this water department is being very creative, very, very creative. I watch my consumptions. I even have a test to prove, and I exaggerated, what I use. I think I gave you a copy of that. I exaggerated what I use, and there was no way on God's earth that I use 10 consumption. And since you're saying, why am we paying 10 consumption and I only may use 2 or 3 or 5 at the most? Why am I being penalized? What'd you say, Steve? Don't talk to her. Talk to me.
It's a minimum bill, just like you get any. If you don't use no electricity, you still get a certain amount. You still get a certain bill. It's a minimum bill.
No.
It's
You
a
can be on
minimum-
a budget.
What I'm saying is that there's a minimum bill that you have 10 consumptions. Like I said, any other utility company.
what a minimum is.
If you don't have, there's people here like I think Mary Kay uses 3 consumptions, but the minimum bill is still 10.
Why is that?
That's just what it set at, because like I say, I don't know
makes that rule?
why. All I'm saying is that every utility company has a minimal usage bill. If you don't lose no electricity at that home, you still get a monthly bill. Period.
But it's not a minimum.
And
You pay for what you use.
it's also garbage.
If I don't use no electricity, and maybe I got a little night light on, okay, yeah. But see, you guys are creative. They tell you if you don't let somebody come in and read your meter, these are the type of excuses. Well, we can do whatever we want to.
Well, I'm going to disagree with we do with whatever we want to.
Yeah, you do.
But
as far as I'm concerned, as a resident, maybe it doesn't happen to you because you're a trustee.
No, and I'm saying I'm saying it not. I'm saying it's not. There are issues, and I'm not. So, and that's one of the things that has come up time and time again. It's not completely the wild west, but we do have to fix it. So I'm taking your comments serious that there's things that have to be fixed. So the question is, what's the order on trying to fix it in terms of collections and going through and everything else?
So in other words, if these people are on your list to go to collection agency, are you going to go through each one to make sure that they didn't do some creative work with rolling back, rolling up?
My expectation, and talking with Chris, is that the people that do get sent to collections will have their bill will have been verified before going to collections.
So you're going to go through the list and watch the consumption?
I'm not going to go through every one of them.
You're going to go through the list and watch the consumption.
But there should be an employee assigned.
Somebody tell me something.
If there should be an employee assigned, there will be an employee assigned.
I will volunteer to do that.
You'll volunteer?
Oh yeah, I do that.
You got some help, Chris.
I doubt if you want me.
But I appreciate no. But the expectation is that there will be an employee that will go through it prior to sending somebody to collect.
My water bill when I first moved into Dolton was say 26 whatever. Then I got a water bill that said 24. Then they took the correct reading. That's how it came up to 3,000. So how are you? Where are they getting these numbers from? If that's not my consumption, Steve, you can answer that for me, please.
You asked that question about the last 5 board meetings. You talked to Sonya.
Well, no.
Don't get smart now.
I'm not getting smart.
Yeah, you are.
So I think.
Well, evidently it hasn't been corrected. If I keep talking about it,
Trustee. Trustee.
Well, what happened to your meeting that you were supposed to have with
we can.
Public
Well, I can't.
next week? Oh, definitely would be. And I meant to bring my water bills because I can show you.
Mrs. Sonya London will be there at the next morning.
I can show you my water bill consumption hasn't been right since the beginning of the year.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello again. Quick question. I'm not sure if that was one of the questions she asked was answered, and I hear it often when it's asked. The answer is every utility has this. Dolton, where did the rule, whatever it is, come from regarding the minimum usage?
So
the answer we always get is utilities do this. Yeah, we get that, but what about here in the village? Is that Chicago doing that because they provide the water? Is that an ordinance that we created?
It is an ordinance. I was just speaking a little bit with the trustee as well. It is something that we can bring up as a point of discussion. When we bring it up for discussion, we have to be mindful that whether the resident uses it or not, there isn't a cost to the village and how much of it we want to absorb. But to your point, it is something that can be brought up, discussed, and reviewed. So while it's something that we've been doing and it was discussed as something that could be best practice to make sure that we get back on track. I think some of the things the gentleman mentioned is that we're working to get back on track. We still have to be mindful. So yes, we can discuss it. It's not a written in stone, unchangeable rule. But I don't know. Did that answer the question?
Yes, it did, because a lot of what happens in our village is we're just going off. I'm saying a lot of it, but sometimes we're just going off of hearsay, and a lot of it does come back to the root, i.e., our laws that govern us in the village. So we need to know what that is. So, like you said, we can work with that. Next, do you know what that ordinance number is, and is it posted? If you do, is it posted online?
I don't know the ordinance.
Correct question. Okay.
Yes, I don't. You have noticed. And Trustee Brown, Trustee Brown said she'll take the note to do some follow up on that as well.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Got several questions. Just trying to think where I want to start. There was a question at the very beginning from the other gentleman here is in terms of the forensic audit and us knowing what we want to have in those specs. First question is, where are we in getting companies to submit RFPs for those?
We have to create the RFP. Last week, there were talks with Trustee Henyard, myself, I think Trustee Brown, I don't know if you weighed in. I know we had some meetings too on getting the RFP created, because the RFP must have the specific items that we're seeking and then be put out.
So who's putting that together?
Working with Chris to put together the details of it, and it may either be John Murphy or John Kasperik who lists the actual RFP. So the goal would be that we have the RFP itself created within the next 2 weeks, and then we can go and seek firms to put in bids for the RFP.
No disrespect, Chris, but I have to ask this question. Would it be a conflict to have your current accounting company to do the specs on that?
I don't view it as a conflict.
Do you see it as a conflict, Chris? As
long as they don't do the work, I would see it.
Are you going to identify all of the things that could be of concern?
From discussions with trustees and based on what I hear at these meetings, that's how we come up with all of the items that will be worked on.
Okay.
And I will also say there was something internally for all of the trustees on the board, the mayor, the clerk. So we've not tried to make this a secret item. So if there's any items that, whether it be a board member or resident, have questions on or concern, we're open to putting that into the RFP proposal.
So you'll ask the residents what we want?
Yes,
I got a whole list. I got a list right here for you.
No, I think we have asked, we've had it, and that's why we've had it as agenda items. So if there are things that people are inquiring about, I don't think anybody's been denied, given the input or the comments have not been taken seriously and put into place. And I haven't gotten any pushback to this point for getting it in. So once the final RFP is prepared, it will go before the board. It will be something that any resident can see as well.
Would you consider having some type of meeting so we can give you the input while you're preparing it and then kind of weigh on what we want to see?
We can have a meeting on that. We could do it at...
Or can I just submit my questions to you? Or
and I'll say, for the sake of speeding up the process, the questions can be emailed to me, jhouse@vildolton.org. The only thing I would think about a meeting is if we had to have a separate meeting, that may slow the process of getting the RFP.
I don't have a problem submitting my questions as long as I know that they're going to be considered.
Yes.
So I can do that. So next question would be, just real quick, I know that you just said that there was $60,000, $40,000 to repair the pool?
There's... I don't think that we have the exact number. I think everybody was guesstimating. The only number I saw hard and fast that I'm sure that I would imagine was research was the $23,000. So there may have been additional expenses, but
so that was contracted out by, and who did the work? I want to know. Don't look at me like I'm crazy.
Miss Wells.
Yes,
you been
sir.
at this meeting, when I first got in, I talked about the expenses of the pool, who was
Can you
doing
just
the
answer
work.
the question
I just,
for
I
me?
mean,
Don't just lecture me.
it was the company, Whiteco Pool, who's been doing the pool,
Whiteco
Whiteco
Pool
Pools.
and-
The pool's been up right now for maybe 3-4 months now. So
Thank you.
that was expenses that was incurred that before I got in office. So that was something that has been discussed repeatedly.
And I appreciate you giving me that information again. Thank you very much. Next question. This goes to the last warrant list. I'm curious. There were some items that were identified, line items of expenses that were questionable, like I think there was one for Taco Place for supplies and things of that nature, and one specifically, and I know it probably sounds like I'm taking a jab, but I want to know, was the bill for Gibson's paid? Because the mayor said he would pay it. Did that get paid?
I haven't checked.
Can we know before the warrant list is approved?
If you can email me, I'll follow up I'll make the follow-up during the next board meeting.
And Steve, you're going to get mad at me again, but okay. This challenge. So if it was not voted upon at the board to sanction the activity and to pay it, why is that coming out of the Melanie Fitness budget? Because there was no sanction from the board to do that.
Only reason I look at Ms. Wells like that, because me and Ms. Wells talked on the phone for
But the
45
people
minutes
want to know.
yesterday.
I am the voice for the people who are not here to speak, and they want to have the question, so I'm going to ask the question. So tell the people that you represent.
So, since you're asking the question that you know the answer to, but the weight loss challenge will come out the Melanie Fitness budget. That's
I know
what I'm
that,
saying.
but I'm asking, why is it coming out the Melanie Fitness budget when it wasn't sanctioned by the board? The board did not vote to take that out of a budget. So that means that the people, the residents, the money that you have the fiduciary responsibility to monitor, all of them. Did that vote go in to pay out a challenge of $1,000? Because if it did, I wasn't at that meeting. That's all I'm asking. Why are the people of Dolton, the residents, taxpayers, the 5 of us, or 20,000 of us, why are we paying that bill? Fair question.
I mean, that's that's the reason why I created the Melanie Fitness Committee, because there's going to be a marketing budget. There has to be some type of budget money allocated to spend to actually promote the gym. And the weight loss challenge was the effort to promote the gym. That's why we did so well in revenue in the month of January. And I repeat it, we made $23,000. That's the more we made in the last.
Disputing that. Listen to the question.
Let me finish. I'm answering your question.
Okay.
That would be part of the marketing budget for Melanie Fitness. Again, like I said, $23,000, that's more than is made in the last 3 to 4 years. Okay. So part of the weight loss challenge was to get people in. And when you hear some of the people come and talk about they benefited from the weight loss challenge. So I look at it as the cost of doing business, but I won't do it again. You know what I mean? But that was my haste and my zeal to get this place up and running and to make some money. I did the weight loss challenge. We did the weight loss challenge with Sadiq, the personal trainer.
That's an answer. However, it doesn't address the fact that it didn't go for a vote. And going forward, I think we did talk about that. We won't do that without a vote. And if it comes to the board to pay such a bill, the board should say no. And not to say this young lady shouldn't get the money, because she should, because it was put out there, but it should never be done without everybody's consideration. And I think, to address something Ms. Diane was saying regarding the collections, if there is a bill in dispute, an active dispute, that's not going to go to collection, am I right? So if I have a 120-day late, and I'm disputing it actively with the water department, are you still going to send it to collections, or
No,
are you going to work it out?
Collection.
Okay, let me see if I have any more questions. Hang on a second. Okay, now that's it. I'll address my questions for the forensic audit because I think it's needed. We need to understand how money is being used, not just a financial statement audit. Okay.
If I can, because you may have a comment, but the $1,000 payout if it comes to the warrant list, I believe the young lady deserves to get her payment. So I would.
I'm not saying she shouldn't get paid. I'm saying going forward, this should not happen. You don't the village is going to pay for it. No,
and then also, and I think Trustee Steve and myself and some others have had conversations about, which is why I think his ultimate resolve was not to do it. But ultimately, I take your point that all these things must be communicated, and I think Trustee Steve agrees with that as well. So I hear your voice in terms of not paying it. I want to. I think
going forward.
Going forward. So, and we have all agreed to communicate and make sure that those things are transparent for everybody.
But here's another suggestion, Steve. You get an expense. Don't you have an expense account? Can you take some money out your expense account? And then we as taxpayers don't have to pay that. I'm just saying. Thank you.
Hey, I'm still waiting for you to come get a membership since you're so very concerned about Melanie Fitness. And stop spending your money in South Holland, please.
Now, I was here when they made the challenge. The person you had to present the challenge, if I understood it right, he said the $1,000 was coming out of his pocket. That's why they didn't go for the board. He said, I'm putting the $1,000 up myself. Now that the person win, now we got to pay it.
Those were two different challenges. The first one he did pay for.
He did pay for it.
Yes, the second challenge is the one that is in conversation.
But did he come before the board for the second challenge?
That one did not come before the board.
So why do we have to pay for it? Whoever did that, whoever put that in writing and said that they can do that, should pay it. Like the young lady said, you got an expense account, pay it. Why is it coming out of our money? We're paying you a salary. You got a stipend or whatever they call it. You have an expense account. Don't put any more money on us. You're very disrespectful.
I'm listening to you. I'm sorry.
You're very disrespectful.
I just have a question. Did you actually collect money? Did the people have to put up money to be part of the challenge?
Yeah, this time we just got memberships. Instead of collecting money for the challenge, we just got memberships. That's why we were able to get about 20 new members there who are still working out there, who bring their family there. That was a goal of the challenge. But like I said, this moving forward, I won't do it no more. But the goal was just to promote the gym, to get more members in there. And like I said, the next meeting, I'm going to have some people who actually came and got memberships. They brought their family out to get memberships, and they're still active in the gym because of the weight loss challenge.
But I just want to say this also, and I don't want to be facetious about it, but I remember a couple of board meetings back that you all did something else regarding a trustee, and I thought it was distasteful to ask her at the board meeting, was she going to pay the bill? You know, you wanted her to pay the bill out her pocket. You know what I'm talking about, correct? Mm-hmm. And now you want the residents to pay for this challenge. Just like you had asked her to pay that bill, I think really you should pay that $1,000 out your pocket.
Okay. Well, that being said, I think that will conclude our meeting. I had a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Trustee Steve?
Aye.
Trustee Brown?
Aye.
And Trustee House is aye.